your birthday cake. It's what's happening on the inside. And this is the best news of all. We just don't test people and say, well, good luck, buddy. I wish you all the best. But we have a discovery. This is the first time when something in nature has incredible science backing it up.
We Americans tend to take our health for granted, that is, until we lose it. Today we focus on a medical advance helping us regain the precious gift of health.
At any moment, the next big medical breakthrough could happen. Research to find ways to make life easier for people with health conditions is a ceaseless endeavor. And for the 13 million Americans suffering from heart disease, this effort is offering new hope.
Heart disease is the major cause of death and disability in this country. That's why research to understand its mechanisms is so important and to develop new therapies. A lot of work has been going on. Recently, it's been discovered that the blood vessels make nitric oxide. This molecule is a potent vasodilator. There's also evidence that it may slow the progression and maybe even reverse the progression of heart disease. That's why the Nobel Prize was awarded for the discovery that blood vessels make this molecule. 3 American scientists received that award in December.
Nitric oxide is a gas that quite simply signals blood vessels to relax and widen, so more blood can flow through them. This acts as our body's self-defense mechanism against hardening of the arteries, a major cause of heart attack and stroke. But our bodies don't always produce the level of nitric oxide needed to maintain a healthy heart.
Several clinical states have been identified with deficient nitric oxide production. These include a postmenopausal state with deficient estrogen production, smoking, diabetes, hypertension, atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease, and hypercholesterolemia.
Now, one of those scientists, his name is Dr. Louis Ignarro. And Dr. Louis Ignarro has a lot to say about nitric oxide, and I'm going to be referring to him throughout the rest of my presentation. But first, let's watch Dr. Louis Ignarro. He explains the process of winning the Nobel Prize.
Today we have the opportunity of introducing you to Dr. Louis Ignarro, the 1998 Nobel Prize winner in medicine.
When I was in Europe, actually when I was in Naples, Italy, which is where my dad was born many years ago, this is when I first heard about the announcement of the Nobel Prize. And actually I refused to believe it until my colleague who had invited me to give a lecture showed me on the computer, in the internet, at the Nobel site, that I was awarded the Nobel Prize in medicine. The Nobel Prize ceremony is unbelievable. It's celebrated in December. It's always celebrated on December 10th, which is the anniversary of Alfred Nobel's death. So it's a whole about 8 or 9 days of ceremony. So we give lectures, I think, on the 8th of December. We meet all kinds of interesting people, and of course we get a chance to converse with the other Nobel laureates. And then the ceremony is spectacular. It's held at the concert hall. Of course, it's attended and hosted by the king and the queen of Sweden. It's just a fantastic event. But one of the greatest feelings I ever had was getting up and walking to King Carl Gustav and receiving the Nobel Prize from his hands. That was a very moving moment for me, as was a couple of days later in the terminating ceremony, where I was actually asked to sign my name to a very special book that had the signatures of all of the Nobel laureates who preceded me from 1901 through 1997. And what they do is they ask you to flip through the pages first and look at all the names and signatures of the prior Nobel laureates. And then when you get to the last page and you see your own printed name, you sign your name with a special pen that they give you. And I remember flipping through the pages and seeing all kinds of names, Madame Curie, for example, all kinds of people. Ernest Hemingway. The one name that really got to me, though, was Albert Einstein, because I suddenly realized for the first time that I was going to be signing my name to the same book signed by Albert Einstein, and I added my name to that long list of incredible names.
Now, Dr. Ignarro, when asked, how did he discover nitric oxide? This is what he had to say.
Now on the American Health Journal. An amazing discovery has proven vital to cardiovascular health. Nitric oxide. Our executive producer, Roland Perez, interviewed the winner of the 1998 Nobel Prize in Medicine on this recent discovery.
Nitric oxide was a molecule I wasn't studying until the late 1970s. My colleague who shared the Nobel Prize, Fred Murad, had discovered that nitric oxide could elevate the cellular levels of an important signaling molecule called cyclic GMP. And we became interested in how this might occur. We knew that drugs like nitroglycerin, which had been used since the days of Alfred Nobel 150 years ago to treat hypertension and treat heart pain, we knew the drug worked very well, but the mechanism of action was unknown. So we thought that perhaps the nitro part of nitroglycerin might somehow be converted in the body to nitric oxide. And so we did some key experiments, and we showed that nitroglycerin can be metabolized, if you will, to nitric oxide in the smooth muscle of the arteries. And we then showed that nitric oxide was the active principle responsible for the vasodilating action of the nitroglycerin. So this is how we first started to look at NO, because we suspected nitroglycerin might work through a nitric oxide mechanism. And what this led to, very simply, was the recognition that nitric oxide is such a potent vasodilator in the body, and we couldn't understand why our body would have receptors to interact with an outside chemical like nitric oxide, unless our bodies made nitric oxide, but we didn't know about it. So we set out on a 5-year project. It turned out to be 5 years to try to find and isolate a nitric oxide-like substance in the body. And that's when we discovered that the arteries, the endothelial cells of the arteries, actually make nitric oxide, the same nitric oxide that's generated from nitroglycerin. Once we meaning the scientific community, appreciated the protective effects of nitric oxide in the cardiovascular system, the question asked was, well, how can we stimulate our own nitric oxide production? So many drug companies set off, and they're still working on this, trying to develop prescription drugs for stimulating nitric oxide production. But after understanding the way nitric oxide is produced in the body, we had the idea that we could get by with non-prescription drugs, amino acids, antioxidants, and so on, to stimulate the production of nitric oxide. And what we found was that simple amino acids like arginine and like citrulline, when combined with certain antioxidants like vitamin C and vitamin E, when all of these are taken together, they can markedly boost the production of nitric oxide and also stabilize the nitric oxide, preventing it from being inactivated by those oxygen radicals that I was telling you about. So this is one very simple way to stimulate one's own nitric oxide production. But there are other things one can do as well. For example, it's well appreciated in the past few years now that exercise is the body's principal way to increase nitric oxide production.
Interesting enough, Alfred Nobel, who dedicated his life to finding a use for nitroglycerin, led to the discovery of dynamite, and he became a multimillionaire. Late in life, in his 50s, early 60s, he developed coronary artery disease. Went to his cardiologist. What did he recommend? Nitroglycerin. Alfred Nobel refused to take it. Why? Because his father and brother both died in tragic accidents in working with nitroglycerin, and he knew how dangerous it was. At age 64, he died of a massive heart attack, and because he was a workaholic and never married, never had a family, he left behind all his money. So they put it in a Swiss bank account, and the interest alone from that account goes to pay for all the Nobel Prizes. How ironic that 100 years later, Dr. Louis Ignarro, along with 2 other American scientists, would win the Nobel Prize on working with nitroglycerin as well. Isn't that funny? And yet, if we look at this gentleman here, this is Lyndon B. Johnson, one of our ex-presidents. And Lyndon B. Johnson, late in life, which, remember, 50 to 60 is not late in life if you're going to live 120 years. Actually, it's halfway home. So halfway home, he also developed coronary artery disease. He took nitroglycerin. In fact, he took so much nitroglycerin that you would see him taking it while delivering a State of the Union address, while delivering a speech on television. Well, ladies and gentlemen, he died at age 64 of a massive heart attack. So it didn't matter whether you took it or didn't. Nitroglycerin is not the cure, but nitric oxide is the cure. What is nitric oxide?
Nitric oxide is a chemical or a molecule, or you can even call it a hormone that is present in the body, which functions in certain specific ways within the cardiovascular system. It's our way of protecting ourselves, literally, against cardiovascular disease. It's a molecule, for example, that lowers the blood pressure. It's our way of preventing strokes and heart attacks. The arteries make nitric oxide for the purpose of lowering the blood pressure, improving blood flow to organs, because nitric oxide is a vasodilator. It widens or relaxes the arteries so that more blood can flow through. That's going to lower the pressure within the plumbing, within the arterial system. And again, it protects against coronary artery disease because it can lower the bad cholesterol levels and so on. So it's the body's natural way to protect against heart disease, provided we make enough of it. Nitric oxide is considered to be a lifesaver because it's the body's natural way of protecting against cardiovascular disease. Cardiovascular disease is the #1 killer, not only in the U.S., but throughout the world. And so the body can protect against all of this heart disease by generating more and more nitric oxide. When nitric oxide becomes deficient, this is when the barriers break down. This is when the protection is lost, and the individual is very sensitive and very susceptible to heart disease. And again, nitric oxide is protective because it can keep your blood pressure down in the normal range. High blood pressure causes heart attacks, causes strokes, and can lead to atherosclerosis or coronary artery disease. Nitric oxide can prevent all of these things.
Nitric oxide effect is simple. It dilates blood vessels, increases blood flow. When you do that, you increase oxygen supply, and not only protect the heart, but your lungs, your liver, your kidneys, your spleen, your gallbladder, your brain, everywhere that blood flows through your 100,000 miles of arteries. The other thing it does is it turns your endothelium, which is the thin inner wall of your arteries, veins, and capillaries, to Teflon, so that nothing sticks to it. Do you know that your cholesterol could be 600? If it doesn't have nothing to stick to, it will flow through your body and be removed through the normal process. However, your cholesterol can be 100. If it has something to stick to, you're still going to have a heart attack, which is why there's not been one successful study that proves that statins prevent a heart attack. Did you hear me? Not one study. Nitric oxide does everything everywhere in the body. In fact, Jonathan Stamler, who's professor of medicine at Duke University Medical Center, says you cannot name one physiological function in which nitric oxide does not play a critical role. Ladies and gentlemen, your body is made up of 9 functioning systems. And not only the cardiovascular system is going to benefit, your respiratory system, your digestive system, your nervous system, your excretory system, your skeletal system, your sexual system, every system of your body will benefit from the production of nitric oxide. What causes a decrease in nitric oxide? Age, heart disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, high homocysteine, C-reactive protein, neurological damage, arthritis, allergies, ulcers. If you have any of the above, you're probably taking prescription drugs, lowers it even more. Alcohol, tobacco use, trans fatty acids, those are those great things we like to munch on, like cookies and cakes and pies and candy and fried chicken, fried fish, elephant ears, French fries. Oh, please, all those wonderful things, as well as sickle cell disease, deplete your body of nitric oxide. How do you create nitric oxide in your body? Well, let's see what Dr. Louis Ignarro has to say.
Nitric oxide is something you cannot simply take from the outside. You cannot take it in a pill. You can't put it in in water or juice or anything like that, because nitric oxide is actually a gaseous substance. It's a gas, and it's very unstable. It doesn't last for more than a second or two. So you can't really take nitric oxide. What you can do, though, is you can take the ingredients that the body uses to make nitric oxide, and you can take the ingredients that will stabilize the nitric oxide, prevent it from breaking down and lasting longer in your body. And so you could do this by taking certain amino acids like arginine and citrulline, and then you can take certain antioxidants like vitamin C, vitamin E. There are many other kinds of antioxidants. And so by taking these different ingredients, these different natural ingredients all at the same time, you will maximize your body's ability to make the nitric oxide. And so that's how you boost your nitric oxide production.
How to increase nitric oxide? Exercise. Okay, you would have to exercise 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to give you any nitric oxide that would do any good in the body. Since we can't seem to give it 10 minutes a day, I think that's out of the question. Healthy diet. Okay, green stuff, right? Well, you know, they're telling us we need to eat 33 servings of fruits and vegetables, not 5 anymore. Now, 33 servings will great for boosting antioxidants, preventing free radical damage and conditions such as cancer, but it does not produce nitric oxide. Dr. Salvador Marcotte discovered that the endothelium uses something called arginine to make nitric oxide. Arginine, what is that? Well, let's find out from Dr. Louis Ignarro.
Arginine is an amino acid. There are about 20 or so amino acids that are the building blocks of all proteins. Proteins that you eat and proteins that are in your body, like your muscle and skin and so on. But arginine plays a unique role in that arginine is the one amino acid that the body uses to produce nitric oxide. Okay? There are 2 amino acids that the body actually can use. One is arginine, the other is citrulline, but the primary amino acid which is converted to nitric oxide in the body is arginine. And it's very important, therefore, to maintain normal, healthy levels of arginine at all times, because when we develop certain cardiovascular and related diseases that are characterized by a deficiency in nitric oxide, the main reason for the deficiency in nitric oxide is a deficiency in this amino acid arginine. So if you have too low a level of arginine, you're not going to make sufficient amounts of nitric oxide to protect your cardiovascular system against disease. And so arginine is one of those amino acids that you actually have to take in from the outside. That is, you have to include it in your diet. And we're lucky that so many different proteins contain arginine. But sometimes, even though we may eat healthy and eat normal amounts of protein, if you have a deficiency in arginine, you're not going to get sufficient amounts from the diet. So you may want to consider supplementing your diet with extra arginine.
In the book by Dr. Fried and Merrill called The Arginine Solution, which was printed in 1980, published in 1980, it's out of print nowadays, they said, in the field of medicine and health, it is one of the revolutions of our time, the discovery that the amino acid arginine may be the magic bullet for the cardiovascular system. What is the magic bullet? Well, that's what all Americans want. We want one thing to fix all of our problems. Now, let's look on their cover. Opens clogged arteries, reduce risk of heart disease, boost potency with natural alternative Viagra, improve your immune system, and more. They refer to it as the miracle molecule. John Cook, who's the cardiologist, top cardiologist in the country, chief of vascular medicine at Stanford, in 2003 came out with the book, The Cardiovascular Cure. I worked with this gentleman for a year. He said there's magic within all of us. It comes in the molecule known as nitric oxide. It is a powerful substance. It is your body's ability to create its own defense mechanism against heart disease and stroke. Your body can heal itself if you give it what it needs. What you do with this magic is completely and totally up to you. The arginine difference, look at this. He also proved that it melts plaque away. #1 cause for coronary artery disease, 2/3 of heart attacks as well as strokes, is from plaque. This is before. You can see this plaque on the endothelium. This is after. It is gone. Treated with something called arginine. In his book, he says, as nitric oxide burns off in the blood, it removes plaque with it, so it actually melts away plaque. Wow, this shows tremendous promise.
Extensive research at the Mayo Clinic and Harvard and Stanford medical schools prove that arginine significantly improves circulation, decreases angina pain, and increases physical endurance for patients diagnosed with coronary artery and vascular disease. Some users feel this arginine-enriched food supplement is giving them a new lease on life.
After taking them for 2 weeks, I could do almost anything I wanted to do. I could cook and do dishes and laundry, make beds, and I hadn't been able to do that before.
Some doctors see great potential for improving the quality of patients' lives through this newly developed medical food and are recommending it as part of an overall cardiovascular care program.
I recommend this medical food to my patients because it contains a high concentration of L-arginine. L-arginine is a bitter substance, and this medical food has been able to hide the bitterness and provide a very tasty nutrient supplement, which also has other health benefits to it, including the B complex vitamins, niacin, folic acid, and vitamin E.
1 in 10 Americans will develop heart disease, but continuing research and new advancements are providing a more promising future for heart patients.
Medically published clinical studies dating back to 1927, there's been 96,000, showed that nitric oxide from arginine will lower blood pressure, lower cholesterol, triglycerides, improve diabetes, improve sexual function, and reduce blood clots and strokes, improve congestive heart failure, improve wound healing, improve kidney and liver function, improve memory and cognitive function, increase growth hormone, which is anti-aging, by the way, as well as improve muscle growth and performance. Ladies and gentlemen, this is evidence that truly demands a verdict on your part. Now, what I want to do is ask Dr. Louis Ignarro, what are the benefits of taking nitric oxide?
The benefits of nitric oxide are many, and they focus mainly in the cardiovascular system, but this also impacts on other systems as well. Because nitric oxide can keep your blood vessels healthy by increasing blood flow, what happens is that the nitric oxide makes sure that all the organs in the body receive the normal amount of blood and therefore nutrients and oxygen that's required. In addition, nitric oxide can interfere with the blood clotting process, and so it can prevent unwanted blood clotting. You know, when people suffer from a heart attack, in many cases this is due to a blood clot that develops in the coronary arteries that feed blood to the heart. By the same mechanism, when a person gets a stroke, this is generally due to the